This is part 3 of the entrepreneurial sales strategy. Here we will look at evaluation of options, which is the second step in the buying circle, as you can see here. Let's go back to this overview again, and here we can see the evaluation of options phase. Basically, there are two main things that the customer asks him or herself in this phase. What criteria should we use? So the customer has to develop a set of criteria to use in making a decision on who to buy from. And then the second part is to use these criteria to choose which one of the competitors best meets these criteria. So what you can do when it comes to sales is to understand what criteria the customer is using. That's not always so easy to get information about. You can try to influence this, and you can also try to respond to these decision criteria. So this is basically an opportunity to differentiate your offering. This phase ends when the customer has a clear decision mechanism in place and has used this to select one or two or three, mostly, final contenders. This is called a shortlist. So basically, in the end of this phase, you are on the shortlist if you have survived the process. Let's have a look at it. When it comes to large deals, or at least important deals, and if you're an entrepreneur, every deal is very, very important. They are scrutinized in detail. So the bigger the amount of money, the more rigorous the process will be. So in the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey, it might not be such a very extensive evaluation of offerings and options. So this whole part of the evaluation of options could be done in a more informal way, but it is still the same mechanism in place. When it comes to large deals, we often see committees, purchasing committees, evaluation committees. We often see a product manager in charge of buying something. We often see a request for input, a structured input from the supplier. This is called RFI, request for information. And then you get an RFP, request for proposal, which is basically a set of specifications that is published. If you've done a good job in the previous phase, the resolution of concerns, these specifications are exactly the ones that you are good at. So here you can see that the recognition of needs phase can impact the evaluation of options phase to a large extent. This is when your friends become slightly less friendly with you when you come to this phase, because here you have a more strict process of bidding, and you have vendor presentations. It's a bit like a beauty contest. You get long lists and short lists of potential suppliers. The long list is, of course, the start. The short list is almost the end of the process. And then you get into final negotiations if you are on the short list, or if you even are the preferred partner. But still, if this seems like a very formal process, it is handled by people, individuals, and these people can be influenced to a large extent. And also, if you have spent a lot of time in the recognition of needs phase, you will get it back now, because the specifications will look in a way like you discussed with your friend that now has become slightly less friendly with you, since they are in the mode of buying something from someone. Okay, let's continue. Here is how this process looks like. It has basically 3 steps. The first step is to identify the differentiators. Okay, here we see the wish lists. What do we want from a potential supplier? What do we want the product or solution to do for us? The second part is the relative importance between these differentiators. I mean, it could be like price, quality, compatibility, stuff like that. And then maybe they end up with saying that price is the most important aspect. Another supplier could end up saying that, okay, quality is the most important aspect. We allow it to cost because quality is so important for us. And then the last part is to judge the alternative suppliers against these differentiators. It could be done in a very structured way, that you have an Excel sheet of all the potential suppliers and you grade them from 1 to 5 and so on, and then you make a calculation of it. It could be done very rigorously. It could also be done in the head of one person, almost subconsciously, just judging the different suppliers against each other and taking a decision, trusting the heart. So there are all ways in between to do this. So what do you as a salesperson or entrepreneurial salesperson do here? Well, first of all, you need to uncover how and understand how does the customer think here. What are the decision criteria that they are even at least talking about? You can also suggest other decision criteria. Some customers go only on price. They don't even regard quality. And you know how important quality is. Then it's your job to suggest them to also include quality in the evaluation. Otherwise, they will choose the cheapest solution, and that might not be yours. When it comes to the relative importance, your job is to increase the relative importance of the criteria you meet well. And of course, decrease the relative importance of the criteria that you don't meet well. And we will look a little bit on this about this later on here. And in the last part, you have to show the customer how well you meet the decision criteria. And here you also can differentiate yourself against your competitors in terms of how you meet the decision criteria compared to the competitor. Let's go on. Here's an example. This is the way customer has weighed the different differentiators, from crucial all the way down to almost not important at all, incidental. So this customer has chosen quality to be the most important aspect. Reliability also very important. This customer doesn't want the product to stop working. Price is quite important as well. After sales, not so important. Compatibility with existing equipment, not at all important. Doesn't care about this. And this is your grades. This is how the customer views your solution. Quality is very, very high. Reliability is high. Price is quite good, actually. You're not so good at after sales, and the compatibility is really, really bad. So what do you think will happen now? Well, you might even be able to read it through the paper here. Yeah, this becomes a successful sale. Yep, because you meet the criteria that are important and you are weaker at criteria that are not so important for the customer. So what if it looks like this? Now you can see through the paper. Let me cheat a little bit here. Let's see. Okay. Compatibility is the most important aspect for the customer. And you are down here on compatibility. You don't really match the customer, not at all in this respect. Price is very, very important. You're quite good at price still. After sales is very important. You're not so good at after sales. So here you also have a difference. Quality, they don't at all regard quality as important. But you are very strong on that. You don't get credit for that here. So what happens? yeah, it's a lost deal. Too bad for you. So how do you then influence these criteria? Well, there are basically 4 things you can do according to Rackham. First, you can develop decision criteria from the needs you have uncovered. So in the recognition of needs phase, you use that to develop decision criteria together with the customer. The second aspect is to reinforce the criteria that you can meet, especially where you are strong. You can build up completely new criteria. You can sit together with the customer and define the criteria together with the customer. And the fourth one, you can reduce the importance or try to reduce the importance of decision criteria you cannot meet by argumenting with the customer, saying, for example, oh, you think quality, you think price is important, okay, but consider the cost of low quality in this specific area. So here, by making quality overtaking price, you can build up the strength of quality as an important criteria. So it comes more in focus than price. You can redefine how the buyer defines these criteria. I mean, how do you define quality? You can help the customer define quality in a way that is beneficial for you. You can try to show the trade-offs here. What is the disadvantage of a very high quality? If you don't have high quality in your product, well, then you can make visible the disadvantage of high quality. For example, that is very expensive. So you can say, okay, we don't have the highest quality, but we have a very good price. So if you are interested in price, you need to consider the disadvantage of high quality. And then you can also create alternative solutions, completely new ways to meet the underlying reason for a criterion. Also, again, regard quality. What is quality? Maybe quality could be that the problem doesn't occur at all because of your new and innovative kind of solution. So these are some of the strategies you can use to influence these criteria. I will show you here a real example from my time as a sales guy. This was the way it looked like when we came to the customer. The customer regarded compatibility as crucial. Compatibility with existing equipment. Price was important as well. After sales was important. They did not really care about reliability and quality. Probably because they didn't actually know what would happen if we ended up with problems together with the customer. So what we did was that we showed them this picture here. You can see it's an old mobile phone merged together with a shaving machine. And we basically asked the customer, is it always best to have only one and an inexpensive supplier? Or is it more important with reliability and quality in this specific area? Would you rather have a very good phone that is very reliable than a phone and a shaver that is not so practical all the time, but you have one supplier, the shaving equipment is compatible with the mobile phone? So by using this kind of image that was actually emailed to the customer, we could bring down the compatibility aspect. We could bring down the importance of price because we were more expensive. And we could bring up the reliability aspect and the quality aspect, as you can see here. We also introduced a completely new criterion to be brand independent solution. I mean, if you can choose shaving equipment regardless of what mobile phone you have, that becomes an important aspect of buying, and that is what happened in this specific case. They listened to us and they realized that we were probably argumenting quite rationally, whatever rationality is. So what happened was they changed. They put reliability and quality on top. They had added this new here, and after sales was not slightly less important. Price was slightly less important. Compatibility was last. As you can see, we were much more aligned with our delivery, what we could deliver. Oops, sorry, like that. And basically, we won the deal. It was quite a large deal, actually. So this worked. And it took a lot of time, a lot of discussions with many people at the potential customer's company, but mainly with our sponsor on the inside, the person that really liked us and tried to, on the other hand, tried to be, neutral. So, but that's not so easy when you start getting a favorite. Then it makes it more difficult to be neutral when you sit at the customer side. Now we will talk a little bit about competitive strategy. This is a part that is good to understand, because if you know your differentiators, what are you good at, what are you not so good at, it will affect how you want to drive the sales process. Basically, Rackham writes about hard differentiators and soft differentiators. Hard differentiator is, of course, price. It's very easy to assess price. A soft differentiator could be quality. It's not so easy to assess quality. Responsiveness, standard of service, many of those things that you don't know until you've basically become customer, or you have to ask other customers that are already using the product or service. And that is more difficult than just looking at the quote and see, okay, how much does this cost? What is the size of it? How much does it weigh? What's the speed or compatibility? It's quite much easier to assess hard differentiators. So, if you are strong on hard differentiators, you want to speed up the process, make the customer take a quick decision, because then they don't have time to assess the soft differentiators. They don't either spend the time, they just take a decision and buy, and then it will be from you. If you, on the other hand, are strong on soft differentiators, you want to actually to slow down the process somewhat and educate the customer in the importance of this kind of differentiators. And that takes time if they don't know. So basically, if you have an offering with strong hard differentiators, it's much easier to sell. Just look at the facts and then take a decision. If you have an offering with soft differentiators that are strong, you need more skilled salespeople, you need experts instead of runners, and therefore it's good to know where you are strong and what kind of differentiators you have. Let's go on. Another aspect of competitive strategy is when you are vulnerable. And the kind of vulnerability we are talking about here is that if you are weak at something, the competitor is strong at it, then you are at risk. You might lose the business. You might lose the deal. So you need to know your weakness, both in relation to customers and in relation to competitors. And you need to make a vulnerability analysis. And then again, if you are at risk, you need to work on changing the decision criteria, using the 4 ways. You need to try to increase your own strength. And you also need to sometimes, but this is risky, you could try to diminish your competitor. But it is risky. And actually, talking bad about competitors is almost always a way to make the customer trust you less. But there are other ways to do this, which are actually much better. You could indirectly talk about and emphasize your own strengths and be very specific on where you are strong, knowing where the main competitor is weak. You can also expose generic weaknesses that apply to all suppliers. For example, you could say that in this business there is a lot of suppliers with quality issues. We have our issues too, but we are one of the least problematic suppliers in this area. That is a way of putting the attention on a differentiator that you know the competitor is weak at, if that is the case. So your argumentation is not only depending on what the customer wants, it also depends on the competitor and what the competitor offers. And that goes the other way too. The competitor's actions and discussions with the potential customer will affect your process as well. Suddenly you can experience that the potential customer is talking a lot about things that you are not so good at. That is probably because a competitor has emphasized that aspect, and the potential customer suddenly wants to know much more about this to see if this is such an important aspect as your competitor has actually said. So your competitors are doing this, so you better do the same thing. So how to make a vulnerability analysis? Basically, this is a very simple way to do it. Here you have the customer decision criteria. Here you have your own position here, and you have the competitor's position here. And if you see that it looks like this, then you have a V. V as invulnerable. You are at risk if you see this V. Because here is where the customer wants to see you. This is where your competitor is. And here you are with your product. Not so good at all. So it hasn't to be more difficult than that, actually. Okay, that was the evaluation of options phase. In the next part, we will look at resolution of concerns. And that is the last part before we get the decision, the deal, the paper. And we can ring the bell and say that we won the deal. So, not so much left before that. Thank you.